Hi everyone, this is Jackie from Bronx Baubles, and I'm back to show you an amazing recent vintage custom jewelry haul. I was so lucky to spot these gems. It looked like it probably came from one collector's collection, and why it showed up at the thrift store is anyone's guess. Now I am the custodian of this collection. These pieces, these vintage costume jewelry, bangles, cuffs, and earrings. There's no necklaces in this collection, unfortunately, but they came from an amazing designer called Wendy Gell. Wendy Gell was a very, very famous designer back from the 1980s. And as you can imagine, the 80s, the bigger, the better, the glitzier, the most glamorous, and it was the decade of opulence and the decade to show your wealth through your jewelry. So when you look at 1980s jewelries, you're looking at huge rhinestones, and you're looking at huge earrings and big necklaces and gaudy and just full of gold and sparkles, and it's just divine and fabulous. And I'm so glad to find this because I did not have not one piece of Wendy Gell in my collection. Now I have 15 pieces, so hooray for me. And I was fortunate enough to figure out what they were. Even though I didn't have one in my collection, I knew right away what they were. And then I started spotting them all over the store, and I kept picking them up. Now, unfortunately, some of these pieces have missing stones. And so I plan to reach out to Miss Wendy Gell and see if perhaps she could help me with replacing some of these stones, as well as some of the pieces are missing their cartouche, and perhaps she would authenticate them for me. And so without further ado, let's get started. One of the first pieces I want to show you is this gorgeous black and a rhinestone bangle. And as you can see, it's just encrusted in Swarovski crystals. Wendy Gell started her career as a songwriter for rock stars. Unfortunately, her partner was starting a family, and so she had to figure out what her next steps was. And while she was doing this, she decided to drive a cab all around New York City. So she had these rhinestone vintage jewelry in her drawer, and she decided to go down into the city through the village, and where they used to have these jewelry stores, and they had these old places where you can buy rhinestones and findings. And she put together this amazing bracelet, and with that she decided to use a hot glue gun and glue. Now, I typically frown and stay away from any sort of jewelry made with glue, except for Wendy Gell pieces. And there's maybe perhaps one or two other designers that I would buy hot glue jewelry from, but she's definitely one of the number one designers that I would buy that type of jewelry from. She had like a 3-step process. She would lay out her stones and her findings, and then the second step was to use the hot glue gun, and she made sure every single little micro inch of the piece was covered in some sort of either finding or vintage pieces, because she would repurpose them and recycle them, or rhinestones, and typically she liked to use those Swarovskis. They were hot glued, and then the third part of the process was she would epoxy them so that they stay. These pieces are over 40 years old, and most of them come in really good shape. However, some did lose their stones, and so I will get those replaced. And if she's not able to help me because she might be really busy, I'm hoping to go down to the stores that she used to frequent and see if I can get some replacements for them. And I'll make sure if I ever get to sell them, I will disclose that. But I plan to keep these pieces. Now, take a look at these two pieces. They are just stunning. And what she did is use these wooden little buttons, and then hot glued these beautiful trivole stones, and a lot of them have that beautiful foil in the back of them, and these two have their cartouche. And then she made sure she finished them off with these beautiful rhinestones. And the interesting thing about some of these pieces, if you look at them, you can see some of the thumbprints of the people who glued them, because she did have a team who helped her. I just think they're just amazing. In fact, it was this piece that I saw first, and it looked like a nothing piece of bangle. And I just saw the way the stones glistened. And when I took it out, when she took it out of the case, I recognized it right away as a Wendy Gell. And then I saw the rest of them, and I was excited. Now, Wendy Gell, she was so popular in the 80s. She actually ended up going on the Oprah Winfrey Show, and Oprah was a huge collector of Wendy Gell pieces. She said at that time that 4 out of 5 days she was wearing Wendy Gell earrings. Wendy Gell also had a lot of different famous people who loved her stuff, including Elizabeth Taylor. She would send her jewelry in boxes via a limo to Miss Elizabeth Taylor's house, who happens to be one of my favorites. And Elizabeth Taylor would buy them all up. And of course, if Elizabeth Taylor was a Bauble girl, she loved the most expensive, the most exquisite pieces of jewelry. But guess what? She also liked the little gaudy stuff that are like costume. So don't frown upon these pieces. They are amazing pieces. Here is another amazing piece by Wendy Gell. It's a bangle. She had not only female aficionados of her jewelry, she also had male admirers, including Prince and Elton John. Now for Prince, his Diamonds and Pearls video, the two ladies that were in his videos, one was named Diamond, the other one was named Pearls. They were wearing Wendy Gell jewelry in that video, and so was Prince. Elton John was also a fan. Wendy Gell created some of his iconic glasses. I mean, Elton John in those days, in the 80s, was known for his flamboyance and his beautiful glitzy glasses. And of course, who's the best person to do that but Miss Wendy Gell? Some of Wendy's iconic pieces were shown in Vogue magazine. She had so many of her pieces in special editions for Vogue. And one of the first people who wore her piece was Miss Isabella Rossellini. And she had this amazing, gorgeous cuff. And the cuff was so beautiful. And it happened to be one of Wendy's favorite covers, probably because it was one of the first, the one that put her on the map. One of Wendy Gell's male admirers was none other than Andy Warhol. Now, Andy he collected Wendy's pieces, and he used them as inspiration from some of his paintings. He loved to collect her cherub-inspired pieces. They are extremely collectible as well as very expensive. So here is 2 examples of Wendy Gell's bracelets, and these bracelets are encrusted in these amazing stones. You find the Wendy Gells with the big beautiful finding, they can go up for $300 and all the way up from there. If you look at some of these pieces, they sort of remind me of RuPaul's Drag Race. These are the type of earrings that beauty queens would wear during their competitions, as well as drag queens would wear for their performances. And I am sure that anybody in those fields of work would love to have these pieces. Now, some of her other admirers was Cher. Cher loved to wear her jewelry, as well as Brooke Shields. These are all popular, famous stars from the 80s, and they were all huge Wendy Gell fans. And I'm from the 80s, and I'm a huge Wendy Gell fan. But I'm so excited that I found a whole bunch of them, and they're part of my collection now. It seems as if Wendy Gell was the jewelry designer for the biggest stars of the 80s, and there was no one bigger than Michael Jackson himself, who was a fan of Wendy Gell's jewelry. And you can imagine, he would wear these beautiful rhinestone encrusted jackets and shoes, and who could forget his rhinestone glove and his rhinestone socks. So this sort of design style would totally appeal to Michael Jackson and Madonna. She starred in Dick Tracy, and she wore Wendy Gell's jewelry and was a fan as well. And none other than legendary Liza Minnelli, who would go into the Los Angeles store and buy tons of Wendy Gell's for her performances. So Wendy Gell was just an amazing designer for the 80s. She epitomized everything of the 80s. The greed is good. Not that she was greedy, but that the opulence and the glitz and the glamour, it was all Wendy Gell. Wendy Gell's jewelry was featured in many famous 1980s designers, such as his Oscar de la Renta in the mid-80s. They were wearing Wendy Gell jewelry on the catwalk in beautiful designs like this one. This is something Bill Blass models would have been wearing on their runway in the mid-80s. Isn't this stunning? And last but not least, Karl Lagerfeld's. His runway was covered in Wendy Gell's jewelry as well in the mid-80s. Although she was known for her amazing crystal Swarovski rhinestone pieces, she also did pieces using other materials. And can you imagine Linda Evans wearing something like this in Dynasty? Like, I can totally see Linda Evans wearing this with her beautiful, beautiful platinum blonde, almost sort of gray hair. She can work this lovely on Dynasty, one of my favorite shows. Other than Joan Collins would have been wearing this on her Dynasty set too. She signed a contract with Disney, and she was lucky to be able to sign this multi-million-dollar contract with Disney, and she has a lot of pieces, and her Disney pieces are perhaps one of the most sought after and the most collected of all, to the point where some of her pieces she wasn't even able to purchase because nobody wanted to sell them, because once they get them in their collection, they never leave. So if you see a Wendy Gell Disney piece, scoop it right up. Wendy Gell's jewelry is what I would describe the opulence and the epitome of the greed is good 1980s, which I happen to love that decade because that was the decade that I grew into my own. It ranged for me from high school all the way through college, and so it was a time frame in my life that I could remember very vividly and very clearly. And that is what Wendy Gell's jewelry does. It's just these vivid, beautiful sparkle pieces that I still love to this day. And even though maybe people might not want to wear this jewelry today, I think they're coming back. I think they're gonna make a comeback, and I'll be ready for them with my fabulous Wendy Gell jewels. She called these cuffs wristies, and she didn't only do jewelry, she also did frames and goblets and wine cups. And she did these beautiful collage where she used multi-mixed media for her paintings. She did housewares and things like that. She just had a multi-million-dollar business, and she was so very much loved. And when I purchased these pieces, the girl at the counter said to me, "I thought that was junk." I said, "Junk? Are you kidding me? Those pieces are highly collectible pieces. How could anybody think that Wendy Gell's jewelry is junk?" To me, they're just sparkle, amazing, beautiful. I love it, and I'm so excited to be the custodian of these pieces. I found this incredible box, and all of her pieces are gonna fit in this box, so I know that this box would be called my Wendy Gell jewelry. So, which one of these pieces appeal to you? And are you a Wendy Gell girl? Are you into that sparkle? Maybe in your search in the wild, you might spot one of these babies, and you'll think twice about leaving it behind if it's for a good price, because these babies are here to stay. They're collectibles, and they're worth quite a bit of money, and they are mine. So thank you so much. Don't forget to hit subscribe. Don't forget to leave me a comment. Tell me which one of these pieces are your favorite, and tell me if you're a Wendy Gell collector. So thank you, everyone. Con mucho amor. My wristies, my Wendy Gell jewelry. Super excited that I bought them. And take care, everyone. Ciao.